choirs would come back together for annual conference, and they would begin the annual conference by singing, "And are we yet alive to see each other's face?" And they really meant it. The circuit riders on the horseback would be riding hundreds of miles across the countryside in order to chase away demons, to lift up the brokenhearted, to bind up those who were lost and confused. And sometimes they didn't see each other. Sometimes up to 20 to 30% of the preachers would not return to an annual conference because they had died. So it really was a matter of, and are we yet alive? It was a real question. I am more concerned today about our conversations at the beginning of the church or in the hallways of our churches. And I'm just as guilty. I'm not yelling at you. I'm talking about myself as well. We always come to church, and the first thing I've said to Eddie was, "How was your week? How was your weekend?" Who cares? Who cares, Robert, about how my weekend was? What have you been doing with the week? Have you been out there seeing Satan fall? That's what we should be asking. We should be not worrying about whether Hillary is going to be held accountable for her emails or whether Donald Trump is going to pick a vice president candidate before the weekend is out. Who cares? That's not our business. Our business is to make sure that people's lives are seen through the gracious eyes of God in Jesus Christ. Are we able to report today that you saw Satan fall? Are we chasing demons away from those who live in isolation and fear? Have we been in those areas that are hostile to the way that people are just trying to make a living? Are we following Jesus into those places that we don't want to be? Are we following Jesus into those precarious moments and particular places that look different than what we usually live in? Are we going into places that are lost and forgotten? Have we followed him into these places, faithfully sharing the expressions of compassion that flow from God through us into the hands of Christ? Did we see Satan fall last week somewhere? I'm sure that Satan fell because of something that you did. Whether you saw it or not, or whether you can remember it or not, is another story. But your acts of compassion and kindness have caused Satan to fall. And that's what we should be talking about. After all, are we not supposed to be like Jesus? However, the 70 or 72 or even 77, whatever manuscript you're reading, it means that's a symbolic number that the gospel writer put in there to say going out to the nations other than Israel. Israel was who Jesus came to, and he's going to send us out into those other parts of the world. Without warning, it seems that they are Jesus, who Jesus sends out into the world to minister to what they have already seen as confused and broken people. If we are true followers of Jesus, we will follow Jesus into these parts of the world. Now, I know you all heard, and some of you all suspect, I should say, the legends about my devastating detour in college. But after that devastating detour of my life, away from what I had learned growing up, I returned to Baltimore, and I finished my undergraduate degree at the University of Baltimore. Well, it was late one spring night, about 10:30. I was coming in from a date, and my mom called me from the other room, and she said, Dr. Kreider was on the phone for you. He left his number, and he said he would be up late. Now, Dr. Kreider was the district superintendent of the Hagerstown, Cumberland area. That's up in there. And I said, I wonder what he wants. Mom said, why don't you give him a call? about 11 o'clock, and I did dial his number, and it was one of those, I still remember, it was a yellow phone hung on the wall there in the kitchen, and you took it, and it was connected, and you'd walk like this, still connected. You remember those phones, the rotary, the push-button phones? And then if you didn't have a cord long enough, you'd go out to Radio Shack and you'd buy one, and you'd unhook the one that was there and hook into the new one. Anyway, so I took that phone, I went out on the screened-in porch, and I sat down, and I dialed the number, and I said, Dr. Kreider, this is Bobby Simpson. I heard you call. He said, oh, yes, Bobby, I have an opportunity for you. Whenever you hear a district superintendent say, I've got an opportunity for you, look out. Sort of like Jesus saying, I've got an experience for you I want you to experience. Well, that night, Dr. Kreider had told me that they had had an appointment not happen and not come to fruition, but they wanted to know if I was willing to serve this 3-point charge, 3 churches in Paw Paw, West Virginia. Now, Paw Paw, West Virginia is a little town of about 700 people, at least it was when I was there, maybe 800 or 900, but it was in the tri-state area, the panhandle that sticks over into Maryland and Virginia. Down Route 9 from Berkeley Springs, you travel down, there's Paw Paw. It was an apple orchard community, that's what they were known for, that had been washed out by a flood a couple years before. I responded with, yeah, I'd love to do it. And then I got off the phone and went into my room and I was like, really? I'm still in college. I still have much I want to do. Am I ready? Am I prepared? I am not even prepared to go up there and lead these 3 small churches of a place that I don't even know anything about. I was unprepared to lead, let alone 3 small churches in this remote area of West Virginia. I think I wanted to do this, but I wasn't sure. I always knew that I was going to try out being a pastor when I got out, that I did kind of want to go to seminary when I got done with undergraduate. But I thought about that phone call for many years. And I was thinking back now, however, I left Baltimore in fear and trembling, packed up a little U-Haul truck, the smallest truck available. It wasn't even packed to the roof, just kind of some stuff was thrown in the back with some space. Big difference from now, huh, Chris? But we did pack up that little truck and went 2.5 hours into the mountains, leaving a familiar surroundings behind us in Baltimore and into the very different place that God had suggested that I serve. I had studied the discipline of the United Methodist Church, and I could intelligently interpret the policies and procedures, but I still felt inadequate to stand in front of people and lead them in a way that they would be spiritually fit to go tell others about Jesus. I was apprehensive to lead a strange place. It takes years, I thought, to develop a leadership style. And then I thought, I can still remember that first Sunday. It's actually today for most of our colleagues who are starting in new places. And it was that first week in July when I stood in the pulpit starting out worship in a robe that Clarence Knapp had given me before he had passed away. And he had given me some books to get started, so my library had these books on it. They were helpful to a certain extent, but this robe that you wore the first Sunday you were here, it's sort of dry rotting away under the arms. But I thought about that robe, that it was too big. It was hanging off my shoulders. It's too big in here. It's not me. And I sat there leading this congregation that first Sunday saying, that's it. That's what the robe of righteousness is about. We are given a robe when God first meets you at baptism. He gives you a robe that you grow into the rest of your life. I had no idea what I was doing that first Sunday, the first year, or even now, as I look back upon each week. But we're growing into this righteousness that God has given us in a way that we become more mature each and every day of our lives with our walk with Christ on this disciples journey. That God is sending us out into the world with the little righteousness that we feel we have. But God has infiltrated our hearts and made us into super people to go out into the world with this robe on, with this righteousness that seems to hang off our shoulders. It doesn't fit us. This discipleship is a journey, and we never have it perfect. We never have it right. It takes years, yes, Bobby, to develop a leadership style, and sometimes I don't even think it takes us to develop it because God is continuously working upon our hearts without us even knowing it. That as long as you're in here singing the hymns and praying the prayers and being around people, you will continue to develop a leadership style of Christ. Ready or not, I was going. Jesus invites us to step out into the world whether we are adequately prepared or not. God calls us in times that we don't know we're ready. And I have fought with God year after year. I was not ready. I was not prepared. And God continues to say, but I am with you. Ready or not, here we come. And Jesus says, you don't need your own preparation. This is not about you making plans and you preparing. You take no bag, he said. You take no money with you. You take no extra pair of sandals with you. I think Jesus would have something to say about us on vacation last week with all the stuff we had to shove in that Highlander. He instructs us to take nothing with us. And I think he does that because everything that we tend to take with us distracts us from the journey that he wants us to make. If I'm sitting down preparing and planning, I think about my own life and I think about, oh, I need to make plans and schedules. I need to write out this sermon. I need to make a preparation for Bible study. I need to prepare to go on a visit. I need to prepare and plan and make schedules. And oh, my briefcase is loaded with supplies and books and my iPad. I've got to have my iPad. It's got to be connected to information. I've got to have information. And God says, no. That's too much of yourself. And I don't want you to be distracted from anything that I'm going to put in your way. You need eyes that are clear, that are not bogged down on your information. Jesus might tell us to leave our iPads and our cell phones at home when I send you out. I'm going to commission all you all, but you're going to go out without a cell phone. Take nothing with you as a hint of our baptismal covenant. That we give up ourselves. That our possessions and our trophies we lay down. And then we go. Sometimes we depend upon ourselves too much. And what we have to offer, we don't see that God is already at work in us. I will give you the love and compassion that you need for the world, not you. Sometimes we tend to second guess ourselves. In committees and meetings, we tend to say, oh, but we need to do this way. And God is saying, hey, just go love somebody. Trusting in him to provide. There's one other thing from this passage that struck me funny. It was a clear, crisp morning in 1998, the fall. And I had woken up and it smelled wonderful. I stepped out to drink my coffee. I got my bag prepared to go to work. And I went out my regular way out of the neighborhood of Rocky Mountain where we were. And I couldn't get out. There was water everywhere. 301, there was water. 95, there was water. There was water everywhere. I couldn't even get to Tarboro. We were boxed in, but I did find a way to wiggle through the back roads of neighborhoods, and finally I got to the church, Inglewood, where we were appointed, and I was the associate. I was with another pastor, but I had gotten there to the church office, and there stood outside of their vehicle was Charlie White, the district superintendent of the Rocky Mountain area at the time. He's a retired pastor. And Hope, Morgan Ward, our bishop, she used to be the conference council director. Well, they were making their way around eastern North Carolina to see the damage and the destruction that had been done by Hurricane Floyd. And they came up to me, I was going in, and I remember I had 3 canned goods in my hand that Christy had given me to take to church in case somebody needed them. 3. And I remember walking up the steps, and they said, "Can we see your fellowship hall?" I said, "Sure." So we walked down to the fellowship hall. It's a huge thing. You know, Inglewood has a huge facility. And their fellowship hall, it was big, and they said, "Bobby, would you be the director of a distribution center to eastern North Carolina?" I had no idea. All I wanted to do was preach and sing some hymns, pray some prayers, you know. All I wanted to do was teach Bible study here and there. I don't know anything about directing a distribution center to eastern North Carolina. She said, I remember Bishop Hope saying, just be the gateway to the east, because this is the last area that's not as badly flooded as the. I said, "Yes, I'll do it, whatever." I think I was more in line with impressing a future bishop. I didn't do that. But anyway, they went on their way, and I remember I set up the tables and sat those 3 cans on one of the tables, and I made 1 or 2 phone calls to people in the church. And by that evening, the place was literally overtaken. I shouldn't say flooded with, but it was. It was flooded with food and clothes and building supplies and all that stuff. And that's what it reminds me of. When we are on this disciples' journey out into the community, when we are going forth, we do not go by ourselves. Whether it's with the remembrance of the saints that are with us, like Clarence Knapp and his robe of righteousness that was with us, or whether it's with each other. Like I told the children this morning, we do nothing alone. We don't love people alone. The church is about togetherness. And we gather together to be together, to love together. When you go out into that world out there, you do not go alone. You go with other disciples. You go with others from the church. We cannot minister or be in mission by ourselves. We are sent with this purpose into the world. Many times, I find that we as a church forget about this sometimes. We forget, number one, that we're called by God to do God's work, not our work, but God's work. And number two, we go together in pairs, he says. I send you out in pairs. Relying on him, relying on his will. It's interesting, I told some people this morning that when our nation is celebrating Independence Day, it is the church that continues to celebrate Dependence Day. We, as a church, as a people of God, are dependent on each other, not independent from each other. I understand the argument. But what I'm saying is, don't misinterpret what I'm trying to say. God looks at us, each as important. But remember, we do God's will. We go to heaven together. We drift off into hell alone. Church is about a gathering of people to do God's will, to share the love of God in the world with each other, and to be kind and decent to one another. This is our purpose. To live like Jesus. To live dependent upon each other. To be Christ. To live so much like Christ that they just see it in you. And then we can come back and say, week after week, I saw Satan fall like lightning from the sky. Wouldn't that be great to be able to see Satan fall like lightning from the sky? Are we the presence of the living church, depending on God to show us how to dance